Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Pennsylvania High School Football Report podcast. I'm Brian Linder here with Eric Epler, who's hitting the vapor rub right now. The smelling salt's getting fired up.
Get ready.
Get fired up. There, you heard his voice. We got Dan Sostek, too. Dan, let him hear your voice.
Howdy.
So now, for you guys who are new, you know what they sound like. For Carolyn Fortney, who didn't let us break Elias Cope's top 5 on PennLive, instead had some other guy do it in a graphic. You already knew what they sounded like. Carolyn, what's up with that? Dan, what's up with that?
Well, no, Carolyn's letting us live stream Elias's commitment, so I think she's done.
That's coming up. So, hey, what's the top 5 real quick?
I believe it's Penn State, Miami, Notre Dame, Rutgers, and Michigan. So those are, you got half of the college football playoff in there. That's pretty good.
So yeah, all good choices here. And for folks, again, this is Harrisburg star wide receiver and all-state defensive back as well, Elias Cope. Who we betting on here? Who do you guys think?
I'm thinking it's like my whole theory with the timing of it. And we have a good relationship with Elias and his family, but haven't been told anything yet. I'm guessing just based on the timing that we've seen him wear that Penn State stuff during games at times. I've kind of wondered if maybe they're waiting for the transfer portal to settle down, see kind of how these rosters look, see what the scholarship count's going to look like at the end of the year, and then maybe try to pick a place. And just the timing of it makes me think of like if he can secure that Penn State spot, go there. I do think if he wants to play early, Rutgers would probably be that'd be a spot where he'd probably be like a number one option for them pretty early on. So, and that's a program too at Rutgers that's been steadily improving since Greg Schiano took over. I kind of feel like he's the only guy that can get that program off its feet ever. Like they've been pretty competent with him the last couple of years, so that'd be kind of a fun location too. Notre Dame doesn't throw the ball enough for my liking to send Elias there, but I feel like when you have Penn State there, you got a couple of his teammates already going to Penn State. It sure makes a lot of sense.
So I think if I think Penn State came to mind first, Rutgers again, same to me. Just thinking, I know Carolyn, that's her son. I know mom probably wants him to stay close, but at the same time, who knows, man? Because Elias, mom also hasn't been afraid to. I know he's been to Florida and I think Miami and worked out at Florida State and stuff like that. And I know he's flown out to California for 7-on-7 and stuff. So I don't think he's not afraid to travel. Was the second thought I had. So I don't know. I mean, I would think that if he can, he'll stay close to home. I love him a lot. I know we all do. Big guy. I think he's probably, you might put Joey O'Brien, and I think you put Joey O'Brien in that argument, but him or Joey is probably the number one, high point, throw it up and go get it guy in the state. Wouldn't you guys say?
Yeah. And I mean, the other thing that it just kind of makes you lean the path, it's kind of said already, but just the Harrisburg to Penn State pipeline's pretty strong, right? It's, you got Mickens, you've got Kevin Brown, you had Micah years back. It just feels like, and it feels like Elias is a guy that, is pretty tight with those kids. And to be a fun group to all be up in Happy Valley together, kind of, be that next kind of core group of guys on offense for Harrisburg, or maybe even defense in terms of Messiah at this point.
Yeah, actually, Messiah, guys, I don't know if you saw, but he got a Max Prep Senior All-American as a linebacker. I think he's being recruited as a running back, but he had a really good year. Linebacker, defensive end, coming off the edge a lot for Harrisburg. Had over 16 and a half sacks. He made our All-PA team, really as a defensive athlete. He ran for 1,200 yards too. Was our Mid-Penn Defensive Player of the Year for our Mid-Penn All-Star team. And he was a PA Riders All-State pick, I think, on defense, right?
And Pennsylvania's Gatorade Player of the Year.
Yep.
Yeah, and Pennsylvania's Gatorade Player of the Year. So,
but he did not make the coaches All-State team.
That was
that
was absolutely good. I'd like if we can talk about that. Not only did he didn't make the coaches All-Star team, but both Elias and Joey O'Brien were second team 6A wide receivers. Like,
all right. So here's the thing.
Here's the thing, though. Listen, all right. Listen, in defense of how the process works for those guys, is they break them down into first, second team, honorable mention guys. So you're putting 2 wide receivers or 2 defensive ends on the first team.
There was 3 wide receivers. No, because there was the one.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
No. I'm not defending it. Messiah Mick is not on the team at all.
Yeah.
Let's just put it like this.
That's strange.
Most of these coaches, if you ask them about a guy that they don't have on the schedule, they don't know boo about him. And also, half of them don't even care to turn in stats for their own team. I don't know how they know anything about anybody else that's not on their schedule for anybody else.
I think Brendan's.
If any of you coaches out there get mad at that, there's old saying down south that hit dog a holler. So, not sorry. That's kind of silly. You can't tell me Joey O'Brien is second team in anything. Sorry, he was the best. Joey O'Brien was the best wide receiver in the state.
Well, here's the issue: is you have the top 3 wide receivers in 6A for the first team. It's Ty Salzer, which I have no issue with. He's got the best statistical season of the year. You can say the other kids are better, but numbers are numbers. They played those teams tough. Santana Young, who again had really good numbers. And then the third player, Brendan Smith. It's just like Brendan Smith on Central York. And even, I love Santana Young as a football player. Those 2 guys over Elias and Joey O'Brien feels a little off to me. A little bit off. I think Elias Koch, again, sometimes the victim of not necessarily getting that volume some of these other kids get. But even then, I think the numbers end up being pretty close enough where it's like, you should probably just give it. And I think we've also said, LaSalle kind of runs into the issue sometimes where I feel like there might not be as much of a Philadelphia representation in some of the coaches voting as there is for the mid-state. So that could explain some of the Joey O'Brien stuff. That could also explain Gavin Starr not getting Player of the Year. But I think the wide receiver thing was especially kind of strange.
Yeah. No, look, numbers are important, but look, this is why, like, when we do all PA, I go watch huddle film of all the guys too, by the way.
And this isn't criticizing those other kids. They had great years.
No. But we're just talking. If you turn on the film of all the wide receivers in Pennsylvania, I don't think you're picking 2 over Elias and Joey O'Brien. I don't think you're picking anybody over it, numbers aside. So, all right. So that's a shot. I didn't even know that. Thanks for getting me all wound up and calling out the coaches again.
It's just
most of the guys. I like the guys. I mean, I do like a lot of the coaches.
The guys on the team are good, and listen, I hear it from coaches too about the PA football writers teams.
Yeah,
this guy should have been here, this guy should have been there, and this guy didn't make it. And I get it. The processes are completely different. They're tremendous players. It was just shocking to me that a player like Messiah Mickens was not involved at all.
Yeah.
To me, that's a big miss. And I'm sure, like I said, coaches have a problem with ours too.
Well, I wonder with that, if there's some animosity, with the transfer, like the moving from Trinity to Harris. I do wonder if there's some sort of like inherent there kind of.
I mean, Santana Young moved.
That's true.
Deontay Sheffy moved.
Yeah.
I think All State, but
Again, I'll point out the weakness of the coaches team is this again, and I know this, and you guys know this from talking to coaches throughout the year. You ask a coach about, hey, you see what so and so is doing over here. If they're not on the schedule, most of the time they don't know anything about the kid.
I don't blame them at all. They're laser focused on their season as they should.
Yeah. So that's the weakness of the team, is that most of these guys kind of only know who's on their schedule.
Yeah, for me, teams, I do like the idea, that it's really just guys who are down on the field all the time, that have like the X and O's knowledge that can kind of give you some insider stuff and some great. But I feel like that almost lends itself more to kind of an regional look And I mean, I get it's a lot of work to put it together on PA Football News. So, like it's just and I like that it's different than the football writers thing, at least that it's not just this redundant. We have the teams. So in that regard,
I'm not necessarily knocking the idea.
Yeah,
I think that's the flaw in it. They all have flaws.
It's difficult to do it at a statewide level in a state as big. And not just big, but kind of like really segmented, where people really just kind of stay in their own lane of like, it feels like the center of the state really kind of focuses on the center. The WPIAL, we dang sure know focus on the WPIAL. And then the Philadelphia area is kind of the Philadelphia.
And you know what I always say, for any kid that made it, congrats. I mean, it's an honor. Somebody thought you were good enough to be on there. So, you know, that's good for you, and you should be excited about it. You should share it. And heck, I tell these kids, if you tag me in it, you know, I'll retweet it, you know, because I got some college coaches and stuff that follow me and stuff, and you guys do too. So I have no problem, you know, ringing up congratulations to them. But yeah, that's a little shocking. You guys told me that there. So
yeah.
I'll tell you what else too. We got some other news kind of breaking is that Susquehanna Township is bringing back Joe Headen after much debate and a disastrous school board meeting, which was about as tone deaf as can be. And look, so here's my thoughts on Joe Headen and why I think this is a unique situation. First of all, let me say, I like Joe. He's a great guy, salted earth. I think he's genuine. If you want to argue that Susquehanna Township probably should have won a few more games, probably shouldn't have lost to West Perry or Northern 2 years ago with the roster they had, I'm right there with you, okay? But what I think is very unique about this story and kind of what speaks to his impact there and where I kind of went to it is that I don't think you get much pushback with people saying they probably should have beat Northern last year, or when the last year they lost to Northern, I think in overtime or something like that, or 2 years ago. They probably should have
50 carry games.
Yeah. West Perry probably shouldn't have beat them this year when you got Lex Cyrus out there and Jarrett Kern and your quarterback there, our guy TD Evans, and the big offensive line. They probably shouldn't have lost to West Perry, but he did make the playoffs. And what was interesting to me and what's so different than anything you see around the country is that I don't think a lot of people argued it should have won those games. And yet, when they tried to get Joe out of there, the community came forward and said, we want enough.
Yeah.
You know, we want enough that his impact on our kids, our sons, overrules the fact that maybe we didn't win district like some people thought we should or something.
Yeah, Brian, I'm right there with you with that. Like,
it's unique. It's different. You don't see this anywhere.
Because I think we've both talked about, you know, how we thought like Susquehanna Township maybe could be a sleeper to, you know, get to that 4A championship game or whatever. They didn't get there, obviously. And so when you kind of hear Joe Headen's out, you're like, oh, I guess that this is, you know, an administrative decision that they think that they can kind of they think they have enough talent to get to states, want to do that, whatever. But once you see the community backing of Joe and see how much that he obviously meant to that program, and then you kind of you kind of step back and start thinking about what the point of, you know, high school football is for a lot of these kids, and it's to provide that sort of support system to, you know, help these kids get to college, to, you know, provide leadership, things like that. Along with obviously winning football games, it's a part of it. It's not like he hasn't won any football games. They still made the playoffs, like he said. I think once you saw that support, it felt like, oh, as someone who's kind of on the outside, I clearly didn't have as good of a read of, you know, just how much he meant to the community, maybe. Because I never want to see anyone lose their job. That's not my job to, you know, call for people to, you know, to play. This isn't the NFL. We don't get to play the hot seat game. So it's not really interesting to me, but it wasn't like something that stunned me that that they kind of went the other way. But then when I saw the response, I was like, okay, clearly this was a board that didn't understand its community, right? Like it just didn't understand what the kid, like from the players to the parents to the just entire community in general. I mean, we saw Torrin Evans at the school board meeting. We saw the players at the school board meeting, just how much he meant to them. And that's, I think, my general reaction to him retaining the job is I just feel really good for those two, you know, that senior group, especially Torrin Evans, who we've had him on the podcast before. That's one of, there are a lot of great kids in our area that we cover. Torrin's definitely one of them. Just a real hard worker. That's, I think, one of the most improved kids, I think, from his freshman year to where he is now as a quarterback is, then you got to give some credit to Joe for that as well. To obviously he wanted Joe Headen to be his coach his senior year. Jared Kern and him to be his coach his senior year. So that was my first reaction. Is good for these kids. They're going to end their career with the coach that they wanted to be, because we talk about transfers and stuff all the time in high school, but it's not college football, right?
I think we froze up all day.
It's not college.
Yeah.
It's not college football. It's you have most kids are just going to stay at the school they're at, and so to give them that opportunity, and to end up listening to your community, I think is encouraging. Especially sometimes this stuff you just kind of wait for it to fade away, and I think it was cool that the community got together and got something that they wanted.
Hey, Epler, I want to go to you, but
yeah,
I just kind of want to reiterate. I know that you've covered Joe longer than anybody here. It's really unique to me. Again, I feel like I'm sure there are parents who stood up in that board meeting and spoke on his behalf, who probably thought they should have beat West Perry.
Right.
But his impact on the kids outweighed winning football games. You don't see that
No.
almost anywhere in the country. So what does that say here? What do we take from that?
Well, I spoke a lot about what Joe means at Susquehanna Township High School, not football, about how he's probably the most respected teacher in the building. He's probably the most respected guy when it comes to promoting what Susquehanna Township believes in and what their mission is. We spoke about his, obviously, undeniable push in to the Big 33 and the Minority Coaches Association situation for the past 2.5 years now. I think it's right around 2.5 years when that was established. He's been a national speaker. He's been to college coaches conventions and spoke. And we all know about his, hold the rope speech. So he's not only teaching the kids football, obviously, and to be better football players, him and his entire staff. His entire staff's been with him for a while, too. These are good, knowledgeable guys who just obviously are just an extension of what Joe teaches, and they do a great job. So you have all of that, pack all of that away before you even step foot on the football field. And that's what these community people and the parents and players were pushing for. And I agree. Yeah, there's games where I shake my head watching Susquehanna Township play football, and it's either they're impatient or they're a little bit more reckless than they should be, or they get ill-advised penalties when it comes. But that's all football teams. We speak a lot about teams like that. So you can't really, say, hey, listen, it's been 18 years and sometimes they lose games they shouldn't lose. And they also win games maybe they shouldn't win. So, he's been really successful as a coach in terms of wins and losses. And again, Dan's right. This isn't college or pro. I see a pro football coach being fired after 2 seasons. They're like, oh, they never gave him a chance. No, it's pro football. You're making $10 million a year and you don't win the Super Bowl, you fail. Period. College football now is almost mirrors at the NFL now with the NIL money. So if you're 10 years at a university and you haven't won it all, it's probably time to move on to somebody else and give somebody else a try. So, and I'm not shoving out any names there, but I just picked a random 10-year, stretch. But I'm just saying, this is high school. This is more than, going out and getting wins and losses. And I think that's what the community was pushing for. And I'm really proud of them. I'm proud of the community for not only, Dan's right, these things usually just fade away. That's what administrators hope. They take the heat. They know they're going to take the heat at one meeting. And then by a month later, 6 weeks later, when they have their next meeting, they hire a new guy. We write a story about who they hired and life moves on. This community would not allow that to happen. And they got what they pushed for.
Players specifically.
Yeah, players specifically, right. I mean, you talked about T.D. Evans. Mm-hmm. Is there a better kid to talk to after a football game than that kid? No. You know why? Because he's smart as a whip. The kid's going to wind up in the Ivy Leagues. And even if he plays football or goes on and has a shot in the NFL or not, that kid's going to be successful in life. You know it. So maybe you ought to listen to what he says. Maybe it's worthwhile what's coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And I'm proud of those players. I'm proud of the community. There's been so much flack, if you will, for lack of a better word, in that community. It's been topsy-turvy with the athletic director situation for years. Lance Dean obviously now is embedded there just for a few weeks, probably a week now. I think he came in the building on the 2nd. It's the 9th, 8th, 9th.
Yeah.
So he's been on the job for maybe a week. So hopefully now with this situation settled, they can get back to being a solid high school. These kids can get back to stop worrying about this and getting back to being teenagers and doing what they need to do. So I think this was the best case scenario for the overall health of that school and that community.
Yeah, and I'll say too, Susquehanna Township, this was, again, I think this was unique. I don't know that you see very many stories in these day and age. You usually see coaches, heck, with better records than Joe, getting tossed out in their head because they didn't, somebody felt like they didn't win enough, and this school district comes and say, well, the people said, we won enough. We really, but we like what this guy's doing with our kids. That matters most to us. So that's unique. And I will say, for the Susquehanna Township School District, man, they got to get it together. I mean, I've been here 8 years now, and it seems like there's always some kind of just like complete miss there on the district side, just for people who will know. And full disclosure, the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, I spoke with some officials in the district. I won't call you completely out, who told us, there was nothing going on with the coaching position. And 2 days later, going into Thanksgiving, they posted a job. There was something going on with the coaching position. And I don't feel like they were fully transparent there. And you know what? In a situation like this, when you got somebody who the community is invested in too, you try to make a move like this and you're not fully transparent about it, you're gonna rile people up even more. And for whoever did want Joe out of there, you totally misplayed this.
You got to play. If you're gonna make this move, you have to be able to read the community, and that's why I think Lance is probably going to be a good fit for an AD. Hopefully, is that I think he's going to be a guy that will at least kind of have a good read on how the community kind of feels about things, and probably be played a little closer to the down to the ground zero, so to speak.
I wanted to mention too, we talked about Micah Parsons a little bit in our last podcast. He went out and had 2.5 sacks, guys, on Sunday. Makes him one of only 4 players since they started tracking sacks back in 1982 to have double-digit sacks in each of his 4 seasons. The other 3.
Maybe go off on Week 18 though. Week 18 is such a joke.
The other 3: Reggie White, Derek Thomas, Dwight Freeney.
All right, but Week 18 is such a joke where it's just so people can get their stats to hit those.
This is our weekly pump the brakes with Dan Sostek.
I mean, I'm as a Patriots fan that Bills flat out they got their guys their incentives and folded to the Patriots and lose the number 1 pick. But if you just watch any football across the league that wasn't the Lions-Vikings game, it was like complete collusion to just get people their their incentives, and there was no competitive football played. There was none. It was awful. It was it was worse than preseason.
So anyway, Dan, hometown boy makes some history, and now he goes and he's trying to meet with Jerry Jones at the Cotton Bowl here.
Well, he just said they're going to win the Super Bowl next. Micah
to talk
guaranteed
to talk contract.
Micah, guaranteed it.
So he's in line for a payday. So that's interesting. What else we got? Dan, you did, before we get to guys for next year, Dan, you did
Yeah.
You know, matter of fact, guys, I think we could probably just talk about what Dan did with college and pros, and do the next year guys next week, right? So why don't we do that real quick? Dan, you did a list of guys they're in the college playoffs right now still, and guys who are in the NFL playoffs. Who are some names jumping off the list to you there?
Yeah, so obviously when I did the Final Four of the playoffs, you got Notre Dame, Ohio State, Texas, Penn State. I think the two obvious things are Penn State had a lot. I think they had 50-something former PA high school football players on their team, and then 4 of their staff members are former PA high school football players. James Franklin, Neshaminy High School great. Terry Smith, Gateway. Justin Lustig, whose son Hank had a really good year for State College. He played at Cathedral Prep. And then Dion Barnes played at Northeast. So they had 4 coaches. But Texas, obviously, they don't really need to hit Pennsylvania unless they absolutely want to. They have a pretty decent pipeline there in their state. So I couldn't find a single PA tie. But Notre Dame and Ohio State have some big ones. Notre Dame has traditionally hit the Catholic schools in Pittsburgh pretty well. They only have one Central Catholic guy right now, Donovan Heinisch, whose brother Kurt's in the NFL playoffs. The Heinisches they've always been really fun to watch at PCC. Donovan is a beast. He's a real, I think he's an awesome player. He's probably going to play at the next level as well. I think he's going to be a big part of this game on Thursday too, to up the middle there.
He had a sack to end their game, their last game.
Yeah, him and Kurt are both. Kurt was a really good player as well. I remember because Kurt was also a Notre Dame player and Central Catholic guy too. Then you got a couple kids from the private school, the Interact kind of Peter Jones from Malvern Prep, Jerry Rulo from Penn Charter, who Austin Herzog informed me that his grandfather was a member of the national championship Temple basketball team in the 40s. So fun one there. Andrew Janaszak from Bishop Guilfoyle is a tight end there. And then Max Hurlman from Wyomissing also on Notre Dame as a walk-on transferred there. And then offensive line coach Joe Rudolph, who's been one of the best O-line guys. He was a Bell Vernon guy as well. So Notre Dame, I think we've always known, always going to have some PA guys because you ever watch Rudy, they're going to hit those steel towns and Philadelphia area. Ohio State, what I was surprised to learn, because obviously they've had a lot of St. Joe's Prep guys over the years. I did not realize that defense coordinator Jim Knowles, who came from Oklahoma State, is a St. Joe's Prep grad.
HCP, yep.
Yep. So they have him. Then they have Keaton Nelson, who transferred there from South Carolina. And Will Howard, obviously, who's, I think, been really, really good of late. I know that he did not have the Michigan game was bad, but the downtown West, the Whippet, might get a decent amount of downtown West players in the championship game if you had a Penn State Ohio State game. And then to add on Mickey Marotti, an associate AD director of football sports performance from Ambridge.
We're going a little deep here, Dan.
Yep, I went a little deep.
Let's hit the high notes. Let's hit the high notes.
Find the people in the office.
Will Howard, Nick Singleton.
Dom DeLuca is also, we've talked about it before, but what a story that kid is, right? Like from walk-on to starting linebacker in a Final Four. We all covered Nick Singleton. We all know how good that kid is. I've seen, I know that there's debate. I think he's going to be a steal at the next level. I just feel like he's one of those guys that might be a better suited, for the NFL game even than college. So I'm looking forward. He's had a pretty good playoff too. Than guys like Julie. Everyone knows the Penn State PA connection, but they've done a really good job getting some of the best guys from the state there. They have some local guys too, like Mekhi Flowers, Finn Fermanic is on the team as well. Jashawn Green, some state college kids as well. So lots of obviously Nick Dawkins is a guy that I think had a good relationship with us back in the day when he was at Parkland, and then potential future New England Patriot Abdul Carter, obviously from LaSalle, who trains with Lansing.
Yeah, did Nelson from South? Did he start at Penn State? Then transfer to South Carolina, or did he start at South Carolina?
He signed with South Carolina.
I think he might have been had a dalliance with Penn State as a recruiter, never committed or anything, but he's definitely.
Okay, that's all. For some reason that name stuck in me. I thought he was a big Penn State target.
Yeah.
I didn't know if he dissed him early and went to South Carolina or not, a big storyline too for Penn State has been Nolan Rucci, who has been awesome for them. Obviously his dad played there, but he didn't commit there, which I'm not sure if I was here necessarily when that was going down, but looking back, it's kind of surprising, right, that he didn't just go to Penn State. I think Penn State's stock has grown since then a little bit, and Wisconsin's fallen a little bit. But he's been, by all accounts, I think he's been one of their highest graded players on PFF. So that's a really cool story as well, him coming back. So yeah, if you pretty much, unless you're watching Texas on offense, you're going to be seeing some PA players all week, and it just goes to show like how deep the connections go. And then even when we get to the NFL playoffs too, there's a lot as well.
Hit the high notes there, Dan. Who are we looking at? Who are the top 2, 3, 4 guys we need to be watching for PA there?
Well, Joey Porter's obviously banged up at North Allegheny. I'm not sure if he's be back or not. And then Jordan Whitehead got into a car accident, so he's on injured reserve too. Some big names. We got DeMar Hamlin. It's almost he's almost kind of transcended being a PA high school football player at this point. He's a celebrity now, but he's had a pretty good year. And I've said this, but like there are people like doing all that weird clone stuff and doing slow motion highlights of him his first year back, saying that he was like a charity case or whatever. He's been pretty good for them this year at safety. A year, basically 2 years after literally dying on a football field. And I feel like we've kind of accepted it, but I think he's still just, obviously he's a pick guy. So I'm, I have that connection there, but I think it's pretty objectively an awesome story that he's now starting again. Obviously was a Central Catholic star. The Bills also have Quentin Jefferson from Woodland Hills on their team, and Daquan Hardy on the practice squad there. So, the Lions are the number 1 seed Detroit Lions too. Also, I don't know if any of you guys caught that Vikings game this weekend, but Alex Anzalone from Why Missing. Did you catch the image of his scar on his leg that he's playing? He's playing through. I guess he took some surgery option that allowed him to get back quicker, and he's got one of the gnarliest scars I've ever seen, and was just flying all over the place. And so he's on the team along with Craig Reynolds, who from Abington, who's taken on a bigger role.
Played at Kutztown.
Yeah. And then there's also a guy named Saquon Barkley too, who's pretty good. Yeah.
See, Dan, when I say hit high notes, probably start with Saquon and not go through the guy who's on the practice squad first.
You start with the MVP that won't get it. Yeah. Is that what you're saying?
And also shout out Chase Edmonds, still on the Buccaneers roster. I think he's out for the year.
Still plugging that kid. Yeah. Toughest kid I ever saw play. Yeah. Ever.
Yeah. And then Brent.
All 5'9" of them.
And then Brandon McManus. How about also one more guy I'll give a shout out to. Olamide Zacchaeus has been pretty darn good for the Commanders the last few weeks.
Yeah.
I was at the Eagles Commanders game, gave it to his hometown team and former team a couple touchdowns. So I think he's actually a pretty big part of that offense now. So speaking of St. Joe's Prep.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. Well, Saquon Barkley.
Jared Verse too. We talked about him before.
Jared Verse has had See, I said hit the high notes, and we're just lastly throwing in the guy who might be the defensive rookie of the year.
Well, the Rams have two also. Jonah Jackson from Pencrest also too is pretty solid as well. But Verse, I mean, that dude is a monster. I feel like that's kind of I feel like he's going to get Abdul Carter drafted top 5 because he's
where he played in York, right?
Central Columbia.
Central Columbia, again, we think he might be the only player ever to be drafted from there. I'm just going to guess.
And then was that
And he went to Albany.
Yeah.
Right? Bloomsburg first, then Albany, maybe?
Then Albany, then Florida State. The classic pipeline. The classic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I look, I'm not hating on Bloomsburg, but can you imagine what those coaches at Bloomsburg thought when a first round draft pick showed up on campus? And like, how many practices do you think it took them to realize, holy heck, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't get many Jared Verses suiting up at Bloomsburg, guys.
Imagine you're another PSAC kid who's like coming off playing, 3A football, and you line up and there's old Jared. What I just that, and again, he's just one of those guys that he does kind of give everyone sort of, hope that no matter where you end up, if you are that good, a lot of times water reaches its level, right? It took him a while, and it's kind of crazy now looking back that a guy like that didn't just go from Bloomsburg to Florida State. He still had to go to Albany first. But man, it feels like scouts missed that one.
They say they'll find you wherever you are, but Central Columbia, I don't know where Central Columbia is. So I don't know. Epler, do you know where Central Columbia is? You've been here all your life. I mean,
it's upriver somewhere. I don't know exactly the coordinates.
Any Bloomsburg coaches that might hear this, I would love to hear the story of like the first practice you had with Jared Verse on the squad out there going against the other guys at Bloomsburg.
Yeah. Also, shout out Tyke Smith on the Bucks as well.
So how could you miss Tyke? He's had we did Tyke's commitment video. Fantastic year for a rookie.
Yeah.
And he's just tough as nails.
Yeah. He was like a classic guy that I think we knew was going to be, he was going to outplay where he was. I mean, he was picked decently high, but just a classic guy that was going to be good. The Bucks had a decent. They also have Robert Hainsey from Gateway, and Chris Godwin.
Tyke, we did that commitment video, man, and Tyke carried me into West Philly, and we went down to a park where one of his friends was tragically killed. Now, I will say, I've talked a lot on this podcast about stuff the kids in Philly go through. I went to a community violence meeting that Lonnie Rice helped host at a church here in Philly about 6, 7, 8 months later. But he carried me some places in West Philly that really kind of opened my eyes to that stuff. And that's where he grew up. And he showed me some things and told me some things and some areas in West Philly I probably would not go back to.
Yeah.
But that's where he had to live. So it's to see him make it out of there and do what he's doing, big fan of Tyke Smith and his story. So, guys, we teased that we would talk about high school players, that we're looking forward to seeing in the Mid-Penn and then across Pennsylvania next year. But I think we're contractually obligated to do 30 minutes. We're right at 40. I think this is a good, solid podcast. I'll tell you what, let's do this real quick. Who we got? Let's do the college this week. Who we got moving forward? Who you got, Epler? Who you got playing in a national championship, and who's going to win it? Go.
Well, I don't think it would be anybody would argue if it was Ohio State and either or Penn State, Notre Dame. I think it's going to be Notre Dame and Ohio State. That's my final.
Let's go completely flipped. I'm going Texas, Penn State. I think Texas is doing one of those things where they win all their games in kind of unimpressive fashion, but they just keep doing it somehow. Like sometimes winning games the way they beat Arizona State is more valuable to me in this situation than the way Ohio State beat Oregon.
I'm afraid looking at the lines that as flashy as Ohio State was and the way they beat Oregon, Vegas really wants you to remember that and bet on them. So I'm a little afraid that Texas actually might be the pick there.
And yours revenge team too.
But I'm going to go Ohio State, Penn State, national title game. James Franklin, unfortunately for Penn State fans, loses to Ohio State again in a national title game. And Penn State fans all want him to be fired again, even though he just made it to the national title game and because he lost to Ohio State.
Well,
That's where I'm going with it.
Put in a preseason ticket. Ohio State was a national champion, so I got to stick with them.
They
should have waited.
That Jeremiah.
You should have waited till week 10. If you had waited till week 12 till after the Michigan game, man.
Yeah, but
that Jeremiah Smith kid is unreal, man. You guys see the clip? You guys see the clip where Will Howard just kind of threw it up to him, and the two Oregon defensive backs went up with him, and they come down, and the Oregon defensive back jumped up, and he was doing waving like it was incomplete, and then he looked over, and Jeremiah Smith had caught the ball. It was hilarious.
They got to change the rules. They got to change the draft rules. That kid should be able to be in the NFL right now.
So I don't know. It'll be fun. I am a little, like I said, I'm a little afraid that Vegas is counting us all to look at that, how flashy Ohio State was in that win over Oregon and bite on them. So I am thinking that Texas might be a little bit better in that game than some people are probably thinking based off that Oregon-Ohio State game. So, it's going to be interesting. We'll have some PA flavor in it, looks like, regardless of what combination we get, I guess.
Los Angeles Chargers win the Super Bowl.
Come on, Dan.
Didn't you see what Herbert said about Jim Harbaugh? I'm all in now. Jim Harbaugh. Herbert said Jim Harbaugh told him he can remember the day he was born. So after after that, I'm not betting against the Chargers.
The NFL is going to be fascinating. We'll talk about that some next week, but as we chit chat. But I mean, Buffalo, I like the Ravens. They're really good. I mean, who knows about the Eagles? But I like the Vikings, but I don't know if they can beat the Rams this week.
Who's your future ticket at?
It's all scripted, right? Isn't it all scripted? I mean, definitely Kansas City's going to win it again. That's what the officials and everybody wants, right?
Well, and that's why I was telling Dan that you can't count out Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid though in this postseason. Like, we know that Lamar's got to prove that he can. I think he's got 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions in the playoff.
Yeah, he doesn't.
Right, not good. So as good as I think the Ravens are, you worry about that. Josh Allen hasn't yet won that big game. Who knows? I could see Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid making it back, Epler. I mean, they're just.
It's automatic, dude. It's automatic. It just runs on itself now. The Eagles are going to lose early. That way they can justify it that they can't give the MVP to Saquon. And it all falls into place, man.
Well, I got a stack of Pat Mahomes rookie cards over here, so I'm all for it because
that's better
because they're. I need to send them off and get them graded because if they're all raw, if I can get them graded and get 10s on those things, that's some nice payday there.
Yeah.
So
all I know is Denver is the most fun team to watch.
Dan was Dan's not a Bo Nix believer, man.
Oh, I've been a Bo Nix.
I'm not a Bo Nix believer at all. I'm a Sean Payton.
At least 10 weeks now.
I'm a Sean Payton receiver. I think he's doing a great job.
All right, guys. Look, I think we got a podcast. I'll let you guys know the next tight end that Dan sends me film of that he thinks is better than Tyler Warren next week.
Holston Loveland. Holston Loveland.
The list is growing. Dan's creating a whole list of guys he thinks is better than Tyler Warren. Epler, I don't know what to tell him. I think Tyler Warren's pretty good himself.
He's good.
Yeah,
he's very good.
Yeah, it's just enjoy the 600 yards a year in the NFL. He's the best tight end in college. It doesn't mean best.
I'm gonna have Tyler Warren show up on this podcast one day. You say it to his face.
Well, prove me wrong. What's he gonna do? Get arrested right before the NFL draft?
Well, they're not gonna let him run the ball. That's for sure.
They might. All right, guys. I think we got a podcast. The social media is pretty brutal these days. I encourage everyone to stay off of it.
Yeah.
But, we're now a society that celebrates the end of fact checking, which just about says it all. But anyway, we are on social media. We do share our stories there. Dan, tell them how to find you on social media.
Dan_Sostek.
I am at 3Jacker.
And I'm at Sports by B Linder on Twitter. Back in the good old days, Twitter. And
yes.
Hey, our producer Megan's at Savvy Literate. Follow her. And PennLive.com. We got a bunch of stuff coming out. I'm sure we'll have some more football stuff. We're actually about a month away from the second signing date, so we're working on that. I think we're working on some portal stuff.
Tune in
Wednesday, right around the corner, and obviously they'll be in the rooms picking the teams here late January, later this month, and I'm guessing they're going to release it sometime. It's usually mid-February, somewhere around. So
we need
that too.
We need to get Matt. I actually owe Matt Ortega a call. He texted me. He thought one of it.
Yeah.
He thought they got a big tackle that people should be looking at. Matthew Hiller.
Yeah.
He thought probably should have.
Maxwell.
Yeah, Maxwell. Yeah. He thought should have been All-State, and he's probably right.
Well,
he probably should have.
He's a 5-star.
Yeah, he probably should have been on some All-State teams. I don't think he got a lot of love on All-State, but he's getting a lot of love from college recruiters. And, so Matt's probably right there, but we can try to get him on here next week too, to talk a little bit about his story, being the first minority coach coming into, because I did a good interview with him. And we will have something closer to the Big 33. Wasn't able to get it out before the end of the season, but I did a pretty good interview with him a couple weeks back, about a month back. And he's the first minority coach of Big 33 as well. So a lot of interesting stuff coming up there. So maybe we can get that going next week. But PennLive.com, check us out there. We got a ton of content. We'll have football stuff, not just football though. We'll have basketball and all your other sports too. And we'll, like I said, Dan's got those list up of guys from Pennsylvania in your college football playoffs, and then your high school football. And then your NFL playoff. A lot of stuff. Check us out, PennLive.com. And until next week, we'll see you down.